Hello everyone and welcome back to episode 4 of this Python course where we'll be looking into strings and we'll be taking a deeper dive into the concept of strings. So let's start by defining a variable as y as hello world. Actually before that let's start by renaming our notebook to strings to save our progress. Okay, so let's ask Python to print this variable y. So once again, just to recap, you do not need quotation marks for a variable because it's already defined as hello world. We run it. You can press this button or just simply press shift enter to run the cell. And yeah, so it prints hello world because that's what we asked it to do. Now let's take a look at something new called type. So what type does, let me just quickly write it here. What type does is basically outputs the data type of the variable. So how do we put this into the syntax, correct syntax? So what we have to do is write type and then y, because we defined y as a string and we ran that cell, so it's already known as hello world. So now we don't need to define it again in the new cell. So we want to find the type of y. So let's ask Python to output what the type of y is, what data type, meaning is it an integer, is it a string, is it a boolean, etc. Let's run, and it is a string. str is short for string. Now let's just take something else, really. Let's make this into 25. So 25 is an integer, so that means when you run the cell, it should output int, which is short for integer. So that's how you check the type of any variable, which is also extremely important. Now let's move on to how to find the uppercase and lowercase of these strings. So let's start by taking a new coding cell. Let's actually define a new variable as test. Let's take test as an input statement, which we learned in the previous episodes. So let's take anything, input your test marks, your test feedback, anything really. Now how do we make this into a full uppercase? Actually, let's first check this. So I should improve. Yeah, let's just run that. And since we only asked it to print test, it printed exactly what we inputted. Now, how do we convert this entire input into a full uppercase? So what we do is we type again print test is the variable again we define, and now we write dot upper and then parentheses. So what this does is the syntax to convert this entire input into full uppercase. So this parenthesis should be kept blank because that's the syntax, and we are asking Python to print this entire thing. Once again, we don't need quotation marks because it's already a defined variable test. Let's run it. I should study more. We asked it to print test, exactly what that did, and we asked it to print test.upper, exactly what it did in full caps. So let's look at lowercase, which is exactly what you think. Test.lower, again empty parentheses, same syntax, easy to understand. I should not copy of others. We asked it to print test as it is, which it did, test.upper, which it did, and test.lower, which is the same thing. So let's input a capitalized one so we can see it actually converting. Haha. Yeah, so we asked it to print exactly what we entered, and now it only converted this into full caps because the rest of the input was already in caps, and it converted everything to lowercase. So it doesn't matter what you input, if you ask it to convert everything to upper, it will do, or anything to lower will do. So now let's take a look into something called split. How do we split strings? So this is a small introduction into the concept of lists, which essentially is just an array or set of elements which you can access at any point in time. So that, let's take a new coding cell, and since we already defined test, let's try to split test into different elements. So how you do that is that you write test dot split. So what this does is it splits anything you input into different elements. Keep in mind, if you enter one word, it won't split that word into its characters. However, if you enter a sentence like this, it'll split it into different elements. What I mean by that is, let's say we take this as our input, haha, my name is James. It takes this as the first element, this second element, third, fourth, and fifth element. Keep in mind that the indexing, however, is different. The index of this will be 0, this will be 1, this will be 2, this will be 3, and this will be 4. Now don't stress if you don't understand, I'll demonstrate it here. So let's start by writing print test.split. As you can see, we inputted this is element 1 or index 0, element 2 index 1, 3 index 2, etc, etc. So these are each element within an array. It doesn't exactly split each word into its single character. So let's define z as test dot split. Let's remove this. So we defined z as the splitting of this. So now let's say we want to access one element. First we type print z. There we go, we get the same output. Let's say we want to access. So in Python for lists, the first element within an array has an index of 0. So what do I mean by the index of 0? That means to access it, this is element number 0. It doesn't start from 1. So when you want to access this element, you have to tell Python 0, not 1. Keep in mind that's an important concept to remember. So let's start by checking how to access it. So we write z, and then in square brackets, keep in mind, and not the normal parentheses, we want to access element 0. And now let's put this within a print statement and see what happens. Yep, this is element 0, and so it prints this element. Let's say we want to print element 1. Yeah, it prints my. Same thing, we want to print element 2, 3. So yeah, so that's how it essentially works. This being 0, 1, 2, 3. There's always a common misunderstanding that this will be 1, but keep in mind that in Python, its index value is 0. So that's a small introduction into lists and upper, lower, and how to find the type. We'll be taking a much deeper dive into lists in episode 5, the next episode. So yeah, that's it for this episode. Make sure to practice these to not forget them. And yeah, see you in the next episode.